Last Tuesday evening, my daughter Vanessa sent me a text message that made my blood run cold. Mom, why isn't the card working? I'm at Nordstrom with the girls and I look like an idiot. Fix it now. No greeting. No, please, just a command from my 33-year-old daughter who had never learned that I wasn't her personal money machine. But the satisfaction I felt reading that message was something I never imagined I could feel toward my own child. To understand how I reached this point of cold detachment, I need to tell you about what happened. 3 days earlier, when my daughter and her husband, Derek, decided to destroy what little dignity I had left. I am 65 years old, and for the past 12 years, ever since my husband passed away from a sudden heart attack, I have been the personal piggy bank for my daughter and her entitled husband. Every desire, every impulse purchase, every ridiculous luxury came directly from my retirement savings. But last Saturday afternoon, while I was preparing lunch in my own kitchen, Vanessa turned to her sister-in-law, Amanda, and said something that would shatter our relationship forever. Honestly, the old lady is basically a walking ATM. That's literally her only purpose. Now, her husband, Derek, instead of defending me or showing even a shred of decency, burst out laughing, as if she had just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. I stood there frozen, spatula in hand, watching them mock me in the house I had paid for, eating food I had bought, wearing clothes financed by my credit cards. My hands didn't shake from sadness or hurt. They shook with a rage so pure and cold that it felt like ice water flowing through my veins, because in that crystalline moment of clarity, I understood something I had been desperately denying for over a decade. To my daughter and her husband, I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a person with feelings, dreams, or value. I was simply a bank account that occasionally made annoying comments about responsibility. For 12 long years, I had been their financial lifeline, their safety net, their endless source of funds. When Derek lost his job because he couldn't be bothered to show up on time, I paid their mortgage for 11 months. That was $200 every single month, draining my retirement account while he played video games and claimed he was looking for the right opportunity. When Vanessa decided she needed to completely renovate their kitchen because her friend Sarah had granite countertops, I handed over $18,000 without hesitation. When they wanted to take a luxury cruise to the Caribbean because they were stressed from all their responsibilities, another $7,000 vanished from my savings account. I was never invited on any of those trips, naturally. I was useful for funding their adventures, not for actually participating in them. It's a couple's trip, Mom, Vanessa would tell me with that condescending tone she used whenever I dared to suggest I might like to see the ocean too. You'd be bored anyway. You know how you are. And I, like the complete fool I had been for over a decade, always smiled and nodded. I always paid without complaint. I always stayed silent while they lived a lifestyle that I financed entirely. The absolute breaking point came 6 months ago when Vanessa and Derek decided they needed a second car. Not a used practical vehicle, but a brand new luxury SUV. Mom, our Honda is 5 years old, Vanessa explained in that syrupy, manipulative voice she always used when she wanted something expensive. Plus, we're planning to have children soon, and we need something safer and more spacious. You want your future grandchildren to be safe, don't you? That question, designed to trigger my maternal guilt, worked perfectly. I wrote a check for $22,000 for the down payment. That was nearly 3 years of careful savings. Money I had set aside by clipping coupons, buying generic brands, and denying myself even small luxuries. But last Saturday, after hearing those venomous words, after watching my own daughter laugh at my expense, something fundamental changed deep in my soul. I couldn't sleep that night, not because I was crying or feeling sorry for myself, but because I was experiencing a clarity so sharp it felt like someone had turned on all the lights in a house I had been stumbling through in darkness. I sat up at 2:30 in the morning, walked to my home office, turned on my computer, and began making the decisions I should have made a decade ago. First, I systematically canceled every single authorized user card, connected to my accounts, all 7 cards that Vanessa and Derek had been using as if they were their own, unlimited money sources. Then I closed the joint checking account where I had been automatically depositing $800 every month for their shared household expenses, which I knew were actually designer purses and expensive restaurant meals. I removed their names from every automatic transfer, every recurring payment, every bill I had been foolishly covering. I changed all my banking passwords, set up 2-factor authentication, and removed them as beneficiaries on every account that allowed me to do so. By 5 in the morning, when the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, I was finished with my financial surgery. I poured myself a strong cup of coffee and sat in my favorite reading chair by the window. For the first time in what felt like centuries, I experienced something I had almost forgotten existed: peace. Real, genuine peace. No anxiety about upcoming bills I would be expected to cover. No dread about the next emergency that would drain my accounts. Just quiet, beautiful peace. I knew that very soon my phone would explode with calls, that Vanessa would be hysterical and Derek would be demanding, and I was completely ready to face them both. The first call came at exactly 10:47 on Tuesday morning. I was in my garden, actually enjoying the simple pleasure of pulling weeds and trimming my roses, when I saw Vanessa's name flash across my phone screen. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring 4 times while I carefully finished pruning a particularly stubborn branch. I needed her to feel that uncertainty, that loss of control she had always wielded over me. When I finally answered, her voice was shrill with panic and barely contained rage. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Why are all the cards being declined? I'm at Nordstrom with Rachel and Madison. I wanted to buy this new dress for Derek's company dinner, and the card was declined. Then I tried the other card, and that one doesn't work either. The sales associate is looking at me like I'm some kind of credit risk. This is absolutely humiliating. What did you do?" The irony was delicious and perfect. She had chosen Nordstrom, that temple of expensive taste where she loved to shop with my money, to impress her equally materialistic friends. Those same friends who had been at my house last Saturday, witnessing my humiliation. Now she was standing there, surrounded by luxury she couldn't afford, unable to complete a purchase designed to maintain the illusion of wealth she had been living. "Good morning, Vanessa," I replied with a calmness that felt almost foreign. "The cards are declined because I've decided to stop financing your lifestyle, effective immediately." "What? Are you insane? I'm in public, my friends are here. How am I supposed to explain that my own mother just cut off my credit? This is absolutely ridiculous and cruel." "What's cruel, my dear daughter, was listening to you laugh when you called me a walking ATM. What's cruel was realizing that for 12 years I've been treated like a financial resource instead of your mother." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear muffled voices in the background, probably Rachel and Madison whispering and speculating about what was happening. The sales associate was likely standing nearby with that practiced neutral expression they use when customers' cards are declined. "Mom, please don't do this right now. We can discuss this later, but I really need you to reactivate the cards, just for today. I promise we can sit down and talk about whatever is bothering you, but—" "No," I interrupted her firmly. "There are no more promises, Vanessa. No more just for today. For 12 years, I've listened to the same empty promises. For 12 years, I've been your convenient solution to every problem. But Saturday, I finally learned something crucial. You don't respect me. You don't value me as a person. And you definitely don't love me the way a daughter should love her mother." "That's not true at all. Of course we love you. I was just making a stupid joke. You know how I am when I'm with my friends. We joke around. You're being way too sensitive." "I know exactly how you are, Vanessa, and I know exactly how Derek is. That's precisely why I've made this decision, and it's final." I could hear her breathing heavily, trying to control her anger. I imagined the scene at Nordstrom, the expensive dress draped over her arm, her friends pretending not to notice her distress, the sales associate waiting to see if this transaction would somehow go through. "Mom, seriously, what do you expect me to do? Just leave the store empty-handed? Call Derek to rescue me? This is beyond embarrassing." "Now you know how I've felt for years," I said quietly. "The difference is that you're 33 years old. You have a college degree. You're perfectly capable of solving your own problems. Are you having some kind of mental breakdown? This isn't like you at all. You've always been there for us. You've never been this vindictive before." Vindictive. That word landed like a physical blow. I was vindictive. After years of sacrifice, after working overtime until I was 63 to ensure they would be comfortable, after canceling my own small pleasures so I could afford their large indulgences, after spending countless holidays alone while they traveled with my money. Vindictive was you mocking me in front of guests. I responded with ice in my voice. Vindictive was treating me as invisible for 12 years, except when you needed money. Vindictive was making me feel that my only worth as a human being was the size of my bank account. "Mom, I didn't mean it that way. You're twisting my words." "You said exactly what you meant, and Derek's laughter confirmed it. You both made it crystal clear what my place is in your lives." I could hear more agitated voices in the background now. Rachel saying something I couldn't quite make out, Madison offering to pay for the dress, an offer I was certain Vanessa would refuse out of pride. The humiliation must have been exquisite. "Look, Mom, I get that you're upset. Maybe I was insensitive. But this isn't the way to handle it. We're adults. We should be able to sit down and discuss this rationally, but right now, I need you to help me. Just this one last time, and then we can completely restructure how we handle things. Just this one last time." I actually laughed, and the sound of my own laughter was bitter and strange to my ears. Do you have any idea how many times I've heard that exact phrase? Do you know how many last times I've financed over the past 12 years? But Mom, no, Vanessa, not this time. This time, you're going to have to find another solution. You have a job. You have a husband with a job. You have friends. Figure it out. How am I going to explain to Rachel and Madison that my own mother abandoned me at a store? How am I going to face people who know us? Everyone is going to gossip about this. And there it was, laid bare and honest. She wasn't concerned about repairing our relationship. She wasn't reflecting on how she had treated me or what she might have done wrong. She only cared about her image, her reputation, what her social circle would think. Exactly like always. That's your problem to solve, Vanessa. For 12 years I worried about your comfort, your happiness, your social standing. Now it's time for me to worry about my own dignity. You can't do this. You're my mother. Mothers don't abandon their children. Exactly right. I am your mother, not your employee, not your personal bank, not your financial safety net. And as your mother, I should have taught you years ago how to be a responsible, independent adult. There was another silence, longer and heavier this time. I could feel her desperation radiating through the phone. She was probably doing frantic mental calculations, wondering who she could call, how she could salvage this situation without completely destroying her carefully constructed image. "Mom, please. Rachel and Madison are staring at me. The sales lady has already asked twice if everything is okay. Please show some compassion." Compassion. Another word that made my entire body tense with anger. Where was their compassion when I ate dinner alone night after night so I could save money to give them? Where was their mercy when I wore the same old coat for 5 winters so I could afford their extravagant requests? Compassion is earned over years, Vanessa, and you lost mine last Saturday. I ended the call. My hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear or regret. They trembled with adrenaline, with a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in over a decade. For the first time in years, I had prioritized my own well-being. For the first time in years, I had said no and meant it. For the next hour, my phone rang continuously. First Vanessa again, then Derek, then a number I didn't recognize but suspected was one of her friends. Every call I rejected made me feel stronger, more certain that I was on the right path. I made myself lunch, a nice salad with ingredients I had actually wanted to buy instead of the cheapest options, and ate it slowly, savoring every bite. The peace lasted until about 1:30 in the afternoon, when I heard the unmistakable sound of Derek's truck pulling into my driveway. That truck I had helped them buy, naturally. 2 doors slammed with excessive force, and I heard rapid footsteps approaching my front door. The anger was palpable even from inside the house. The pounding started immediately, aggressive and demanding. "Margaret, open this door right now. We need to talk about this insanity." Derek's voice was loud enough that I was certain my neighbors could hear every word. "I know you're in there. Your car is parked right in the driveway." I didn't move from my position at the kitchen table. I sat there calmly, finishing my salad, watching the afternoon sunlight stream through my window. It was remarkable how much more I could appreciate these small moments when I wasn't consumed with anxiety about their next financial crisis. "Mom," Vanessa's voice now, pitched high with frustration and embarrassment. "Stop acting like a child and come out here and face what you've done. Face what I've done." As if I were the one who had committed some terrible crime. As if I were the one who owed them an explanation after 12 years of being used and disrespected. The projection was so absurd it almost made me smile. The pounding intensified. They weren't just using their fists anymore. I could hear them kicking the door as well. My beautiful oak door, the one my late husband had specially ordered and installed himself, was being assaulted like it was the entrance to some condemned building. "This is absolutely insane," Derek shouted. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Vanessa's friends had to witness her card being declined multiple times. Do you have any idea how that looked? Her mother had to come pick her up like some teenager who can't handle her own finances." So that's what happened. Vanessa's mother, my ex-husband's new wife Catherine, had to rescue her. I pictured the scene with perfect clarity. Vanessa standing there, face flushed with humiliation, trying to explain to Rachel and Madison why none of her cards worked. Derek probably making excuses about banking errors or security freezes. And finally, Catherine arriving to save the day, probably with a knowing look that said she had always suspected something like this might happen. "Margaret, please." Vanessa's voice had shifted to a different tone now, softer, more pleading. "People are already talking about this. Rachel texted 3 of our mutual friends. This is going to be all over our social group by tomorrow. Please don't do this to us." Our social group. Not my reputation or my dignity, but their position in a social hierarchy that had always been maintained with my money. They were terrified of being exposed as the frauds they really were. People living far beyond their actual means, supported entirely by a mother they openly mocked. The pounding stopped temporarily, and I could hear their voices as they argued in harsh whispers. They were strategizing, planning their next approach. I knew Vanessa well enough to know she had a full playbook of emotional manipulation tactics, and Derek had learned from the master over the years. "Mom!" Derek had adopted a completely different tone now, calm, reasonable, almost therapeutic. "Look, I understand you're feeling hurt. Vanessa explained what she said on Saturday, and I can see how you might have misunderstood it. She was just joking around with family. You know how she gets when she's comfortable around people. She says things she doesn't really mean." It was fascinating to hear him try to reframe her cruelty as some kind of communication style issue. As if calling your mother a walking ATM was just a quirky personality trait rather than a fundamental lack of respect. "Margaret," Vanessa again, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. Maybe I was insensitive, but canceling all the cards doesn't solve anything. It just creates more problems for everyone. For everyone. Not for me, obviously. For them, for their comfort, for their ability to continue living without consequences. My emotional well-being still didn't factor into their calculations at all. Mom, please. We can change things. We can set up a better system. Derek sounded almost sincere now. But I have bills due today. The insurance on both cars comes out tomorrow, and Vanessa has a dental appointment this week that we already scheduled. We can't just be left high and dry without any warning. Without warning. As if 12 years of being taken advantage of wasn't warning enough. As if watching them spend my retirement savings on luxuries while I shopped at thrift stores wasn't a clear sign something was wrong. In their minds, my money was their money, and cutting them off was somehow a violation of an agreement I had never consciously made. Margaret, please think about what this looks like. Vanessa had switched tactics again, now sounding concerned and almost motherly toward me. What will people at church think when they find out you cut off your own daughter without any discussion? What will your friends say? What will family members think about you? The church, the friends, the family. Always the same weapons. Using my reputation, my relationships, my standing in the community as emotional leverage. As if my value as a person was determined entirely by what others thought. As if my dignity was less important than maintaining a false image of family harmony. Look, Mom, Derek had moved to a more serious, authoritative tone now. I understand you want to make some changes in how we handle finances. That's totally fair. We can absolutely sit down and create some boundaries, maybe set up a different arrangement. But this, just cutting everything off without any warning or discussion, this is emotional manipulation. You're punishing us. Emotional manipulation. The words echoed in my mind like an accusation. I was being emotionally manipulative after enduring 12 years of their guilt trips, their subtle blackmail, their weaponization of my love for them to empty my bank accounts. The psychological projection was so blatant, it would have been comical if it weren't so infuriating. The knocking resumed, but more sporadically now, less aggressive. They were starting to realize that the brute force approach wasn't working. I heard them move around the house, probably trying to peer through windows to see if they could spot me inside. Margaret, Derek called from what sounded like the side of the house. We can see your shadow moving in there. We know you're home. Stop hiding like this is some kind of game. A game? That's what he thought this was. Some petty power play rather than a woman finally standing up for her own dignity after years of abuse. I got up from the kitchen table and walked slowly toward my bedroom window where I knew they were standing. I pulled back the curtain just enough for them to see my face clearly. Our eyes met through the glass. Vanessa's expression immediately transformed from frustration to relief to that practiced smile I had seen her use countless times when she wanted something. There you are, she said loudly enough for me to hear through the window. Come on, open the door. Let's sit down and talk about this like a family. I looked at her for a long moment, really studied her face. She was 33 years old, but somehow still carried herself like a teenager who expected the world to bend to her wishes. When had she become this person? Or had she always been this way, and I had simply refused to see it because I loved her? Very slowly, very deliberately, I closed the curtain again. I heard Vanessa's shriek of frustration, followed by more pounding on the window, but this time I felt completely calm. I walked back to my living room, sat down with a book I had been wanting to read for months, and actually began reading. The shouting and knocking continued for another 2 hours. I could hear fragments of their increasingly desperate conversations, their wild plans to make me change my mind. At one point, Derek suggested calling a locksmith to force the door open, but Vanessa reminded him that would be breaking and entering, and even they weren't quite desperate enough to risk legal trouble. Finally, around 4 in the afternoon, I heard the truck doors slam shut and the engine start. They were leaving, but I knew this was far from over. I knew Vanessa well enough to understand she was already planning her next attack, probably something more elaborate involving other family members or friends. I was absolutely right. By 5:30 that evening, my phone started ringing with unfamiliar numbers. First, it was Catherine, Vanessa's stepmother, her voice professionally neutral, but with an edge of judgment. "Margaret, hello. Vanessa called me very upset about what happened today. I think there might be some confusion here. Perhaps we should all sit down together and work through this misunderstanding." I hung up without responding. I had no interest in being lectured by a woman who had been in my daughter's life for less than 5 years, but had somehow become an authority on our relationship. Then my brother Robert called. He lives on the other side of the country and clearly had received a heavily edited version of events. "Margaret, what's going on? Vanessa called me in tears. She says you've completely cut her off financially without any warning or explanation. That doesn't sound like you at all. Are you feeling all right? Is something wrong with your health?" "I'm perfectly fine, Robert," I replied. "In fact, I feel better than I have in over a decade." "But I don't understand." "Vanessa says you canceled all her access to your accounts, that you left her stranded at a store. She's saying you're acting completely out of character. Are you sure everything is okay mentally?" "Did Vanessa mention why I might have made these changes?" I asked. "She said there was some kind of misunderstanding, that she made a joke that you took the wrong way." "A joke? Is that what she called it?" "She said you overreacted to something she said casually among family. Margaret, you've always been so generous with Vanessa. Isn't this reaction a bit extreme?" "Robert, let me ask you something. Do your adult children have unlimited access to your credit cards?" "Well, no, but do you pay your adult children's mortgages?" "No, do you finance their vacations, their cars, their home renovations while you live on a strict budget?" Robert was quiet for a moment. "I see your point, but surely you two can work this out without such drastic measures." "You know what's drastic, Robert? Working until you're 63 so you can support 2 able-bodied adults who should be supporting themselves. That's drastic." After that conversation, I turned off my phone completely. I needed absolute silence to process everything I was feeling, to plan my next steps without constant interruptions. That evening, I sat down at my computer and did something I had been avoiding for years. I calculated the exact total of what I had spent on Vanessa and Derek since my husband died. I gathered bank statements, credit card records, check registers, everything I could find for the past 12 years. The numbers were absolutely devastating. $127,000. $127,000 in 12 years. That was more than 2 years of my pre-retirement salary. That was money I had earned through decades of hard work, careful saving, and countless sacrifices. And what had I received in return? Mockery, disrespect, and the privilege of being called a walking ATM. But it wasn't just the total amount that shocked me. It was the pattern I could see when I reviewed the charges month by month. Every time I tried to pull back, every time I hesitated to give them money, there would be a crisis within days. Derek would suddenly have a car problem. Vanessa would have an emergency dental bill. Their heating system would mysteriously break down. These crises always appeared precisely when I was starting to save money again. I also discovered something that made my blood boil. They had been using one of my credit cards for subscription services I didn't even know existed. Premium streaming services, expensive meal kit deliveries, a wine club that charged $200 per month, a gym membership that cost $150 monthly. Small recurring charges that added up to over $600 per month. Money automatically drained from my account to pay for luxuries I never enjoyed and didn't even know I was funding. That night, I made another critical decision. I retrieved my will from my file cabinet and read through it carefully. I had written this document 8 years ago when I still believed I was securing a comfortable future for a loving and grateful family. Vanessa was listed as the sole beneficiary of everything: the house, the remaining savings, the investments, my life insurance policy. But now I saw that will with completely different eyes. Why should I leave my entire estate to someone who had already spent more than half of it while I was still alive? Why should I reward with an inheritance the person who had treated me like a resource instead of a mother? Why should Derek benefit from my death when he had contributed nothing but contempt to my life? I decided that first thing Monday morning, I would contact my attorney to schedule an appointment for a complete rewrite of my estate planning documents. If Vanessa wanted to treat me like a bank, then she could settle for the scraps, not the whole pie. I slept that night with a calmness I hadn't felt in years. There were no anxious dreams about unpaid bills or urgent financial crises, no nightmares about disappointing my daughter or failing as a mother. Just deep, peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. I woke up Saturday morning feeling energized and clear-headed. After breakfast, I decided to do something I hadn't done in over a decade. I went shopping for myself, not at the discount stores where I usually shopped, carefully calculating every purchase. I went to a nice boutique in the downtown area, the kind of place I had always told myself was too expensive, while simultaneously funding Vanessa's designer wardrobe. I tried on dresses, bought comfortable new shoes, selected a beautiful scarf that caught my eye. The total came to $380, which would have once filled me with guilt. But as I handed over my credit card, I felt nothing but satisfaction. This was my money, earned through my work, and I had every right to spend it on myself. The sales associate, a woman in her 50s, smiled warmly as she wrapped my purchases. "Treating yourself today?" "Yes," I replied, for the first time in a very long time. "Good for you," she said, and something in her tone suggested she understood more than just a simple shopping trip. We all deserve to spoil ourselves sometimes. As I was leaving the store, I literally bumped into someone I knew, Jennifer, a woman from my church who I had known casually for years. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Margaret, I haven't seen you in forever. How have you been?" We ended up going for coffee at a nearby cafe, and as we talked, I realized how isolated I had become over the years. I had gradually stopped attending social events, stopped meeting friends for lunch, stopped participating in activities I enjoyed, all because I was constantly worried about saving money for Vanessa's next emergency. "You seem different today," Jennifer observed as we sat with our coffee. "More relaxed or something." "I made some big changes this week," I said carefully. "Good changes, I hope?" "Difficult but necessary." Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the best changes are the hardest ones to make." We talked for over an hour, and I found myself sharing more than I had intended. Not all the details, but enough for her to understand the general situation. Jennifer listened without judgment, occasionally nodding with understanding. "Margaret," she said when I finished, "I'm going to tell you something I probably should have said years ago. I've watched Vanessa treat you like a convenience for a long time. We all have. Everyone at church has noticed. But we didn't want to interfere in family business." Her words were a shock. Other people had seen what I had been denying. The humiliation I felt was quickly replaced by a strange relief. At least I wasn't imagining things. "I remember last Christmas," Jennifer continued, "when Vanessa posted all those pictures from her vacation in Hawaii. Beautiful resort, first-class everything. And you told me you were staying home because you needed to save money. It didn't take a genius to figure out the connection." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I always told myself I was helping her, that I was being a good mother. "There's a difference between helping and enabling," Jennifer said gently. "And there's a big difference between being a good mother and being a doormat." Monday morning arrived with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I had 3 important appointments scheduled: my attorney at 9Y, my financial advisor at 11 and my doctor at 2 a checkup I had been postponing because I told myself I couldn't afford it while secretly funding Vanessa's luxuries. At the attorney's office, Mr. Philip Chen listened carefully as I explained my situation and my intentions for changing my will. He was a distinguished man in his 60s who had handled my legal affairs for over 15 years. "Mrs. Margaret," he said after I finished, "I want you to know that what you're describing is unfortunately very common. Adult children who become financially dependent on their parents often develop an entitlement mentality. The fact that you're addressing this now shows remarkable strength." "I want to completely restructure my estate," I told him. "Vanessa will receive something, but only a fraction of what I originally planned. The majority should go to charitable organizations and to my brother Robert, who has never asked me for a single dollar." "That's completely within your rights," Mr. Chen assured me. "Do you want to include any conditions on Vanessa's inheritance?" I thought about this carefully. "Yes. She can only access her portion if she can prove 1 full year of complete financial independence. No assistance from anyone, living entirely on her and Derek's income." Mr. Chen smiled slightly. "That's creative and entirely legal. You're essentially incentivizing the behavior you wanted to see all along. It will take me about a week to draft the new documents, but I can have something ready for your review by next Monday." My meeting with the financial advisor, Linda Rodriguez, was equally productive. She reviewed all my accounts and helped me understand exactly how much damage had been done to my retirement security. "Margaret, I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Linda said, showing me various charts and projections. "The $127,000 you've given them over 12 years has significantly impacted your retirement. If that money had stayed invested, with compound interest, you'd be looking at nearly $180,000 in additional funds." The number hit me like a physical blow. $180,000. That was nearly 3 additional years of comfortable retirement living that I had essentially given away. "However," Linda continued, "the good news is that you're only 65. If you stop all financial support immediately and allow your remaining investments to grow, you can still have a secure retirement. It won't be as comfortable as it could have been, but you'll be fine." "What if I had continued at the same pace?" I asked. Linda's face grew serious. "If you had continued for another 10 years at the same rate of spending, you would have depleted your savings entirely by age 75. You would have been forced to rely on Social Security alone, possibly needing to sell your house just to survive." The reality was sobering. I had been literally destroying my own financial security to fund their lifestyle. Another decade, and I would have had nothing left. When I got home that afternoon, I sat down and did something I had never done before. I wrote a detailed email to Vanessa explaining exactly why I had made my decisions. Not an emotional rant, but a clear, factual explanation with numbers and dates. "Dear Vanessa," I wrote, "I'm sending this email because I want you to understand that my decision wasn't made in anger or spite, but from necessity and self-preservation." I then laid out the full financial picture, every major expense, the total amounts, the impact on my retirement. I included the quote from Saturday that had been the final straw. I explained how I had discovered the unauthorized subscriptions and recurring charges. I detailed the pattern of emergencies that always seemed to appear when I tried to save money. "For 12 years," I wrote, "I enabled your financial irresponsibility because I confused being a good mother with being an endless source of money. I sacrificed my own security, comfort, and dignity because I wanted to help you. But I've come to understand that I wasn't helping you at all. I was preventing you from learning the most important lesson of adulthood, how to live within your means and take responsibility for your own choices." I explained my new boundary: no more financial assistance of any kind ever. If they had a true emergency, medical crisis, job loss through no fault of their own, I would consider helping with advice or resources, but not money. I would be happy to have a relationship with them, but only if they could treat me with respect and see me as a person rather than a bank account. If you can accept these terms, I concluded, then I hope we can rebuild our relationship on a healthier foundation. If you cannot, then I wish you well, but I will no longer be part of your life. The choice is entirely yours. I sent